You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White. This book is not sapphic, so it doesn't really fit the theme of this channel, but I don't care, because this is one of my most anticipated books of the year, and it lived up to my expectations. I'm a big Andrew Joseph White fan. I've read all of his books. His first 3 books were YA novels: Hell Followed With Us, The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, and Compound Fracture. I absolutely recommend all of those if you're into horror YA, and like really substantial horror YA. You can read it as an adult. I did, and I very much enjoyed all 3 of those books. This is his first adult novel, also horror, and I knew going in that this would be very heavy. Again, all of his young adult books are very substantial in their themes and like very strong and very meaty, and so I knew his adult novel would kick that up 10 times, and it absolutely did. This is a very heavy book, but it's quite good if that is what you're into, and you know that going into it. So all of these books are still queer. He writes about trans men, frequently gay trans men, frequently autistic trans men, and sometimes gay autistic trans men, like the main character of this book. The very, very brief summary of this book is a autistic trans man trapped in an alien worm cult with an abusive boyfriend finds out that he's pregnant, and both the Hive and the abusive boyfriend and Roe v. Wade will not let him get rid of the baby. He is forced to carry this pregnancy, and it is his absolute nightmare. This is total body horror. It's rough out here. This is a tough read. Although I will say about halfway through this book, I noticed that it wasn't as tough to read as it was in the beginning. Like, in the beginning, I was reading this very slowly. I thought this book would take me longer to get through than it did, because it's heavy and it deals with very heavy topics. But I'd say if you can get through the first third to half of this book, you can get through the whole book. But like the horror elements and like the weight of this is really prominent right in the beginning, I suppose because you're establishing these concepts. And I don't know if I was just sort of used to all of the terrible things happening in this book by the halfway mark, or if they are just top-loaded in the beginning because you have to present these ideas. And I think maybe that's a good way to do it, because you'll kind of know immediately if this is too heavy for you. It starts out rough right from the get-go, really. So you're not going to get jump scared halfway through by a scene you can't stomach. There's a lot that you probably wouldn't be able to stomach if you weren't going to be able to stomach parts of this book right from the beginning. So that's good for knowing if this is a book for you or not. I do think you have to be in a certain headspace to read this, or like maybe there are certain headspaces when you should not be reading this. I'll give trigger warnings for everything under the sun. Anything terrible you can imagine is probably in this. Dubious consent, forced pregnancy, body horror, suicidality. This main character is going through a time. Andrew Joseph White really likes to write books about trans rage and trans people going through the ringer, but in this very resilient, strong kind of way. It's not tragedy porn for the sake of tragedy porn. It's definitely saying something here. I don't want to say that this book has a good ending, because there's really no good ending to come of this. Reading this book, at no point are you like, this is gonna have a happy ending and everything's going to be a-okay. It's not. I don't know how many spoilers I want to get into. I do think I want to talk about the ending a bit at the end, so there will be spoilers later. But for now, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that this isn't like the happiest ending of all time, but it's also not just the worst ending of all time, and these characters suffer for nothing, and they don't learn anything, and they don't grow, or they don't come out of this stronger, or better. I don't want to say better, because I don't think this character is a better person for having gone through any of this, but they're stronger, and they sort of make the most of a terrible hand that has been dealt to them, and I think that's kind of a theme in a lot of Andrew Joseph White books, and is maybe kind of a relevant theme for trans literature at the moment, unfortunately. But this book is clearly saying that and talking about that. To get into a longer summary, which I typically do, I'm trying to get better at I don't know, condensing things, but maybe I don't want to condense things. Maybe that's just not me. Maybe I will be yapping here for 30 minutes when I sat down to film a 15-minute video. That's usually how it goes. But our main character is a trans man named Crane. He's 22, but when he was 17, before he transitioned, he was planning to kill himself. He was at an incredibly low point in his life, and that is when the alien worm hive mind cult steps in. They prey on vulnerable people, and they are literally a hive mind of worms. They're like a worm cocoon. It's multiple worms all together, and there's supposedly like different hives in like different cities, and there are like different sects of the cult group that are like dedicated to protecting parts of these hives. But I guess they're all still interconnected. It's a hive mind, right? But whatever manipulative alien worms that call out to these very desperate people in these awful situations and convince them to completely abandon their family. No contact with the outside world is allowed. Crane's family thinks he's dead. And he comes and lives and works at this gas station. I guess he doesn't live at the gas station. He lives around the gas station. But it's sort of a functioning gas station in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia. But it's also really just a place for these worms to hang out. There's like a back room that's just full of worms and like body parts and dead carcasses because they feed the worms. They kill people to feed the worms, and there's a lot of murder here. There's a lot of like hazing, and if someone defects from the cult, they go kill him. So this is not a great place, but the worms sort of understand Crane, or sort of see him in a way that no one else has. They see him as a man. They sort of validate him in that way. They allow him to transition. He's on testosterone. He has this tiny sort of little community, found family kind of thing. There's an older woman named Tammy who's like the mom of this group. There's another girl who gets brought in, and then there's Levi, who is Crane's abusive boyfriend. Boyfriend is a term used loosely here. They're together, but in the sense that, I don't know, they're hooking up. They do not love each other. Neither of them loves the other. The sexual elements of their relationship are very dark, and they're consensually dark, but you also get some sense that a lot of Crane's kinks are not coming from a healthy place, and he likes to be degraded and used and violated in these ways because he doesn't have self-worth. And so it's not kink in a traditional healthy sense. There's definitely an unhealthy relationship between these two, and again, they don't love each other. And Levi doesn't really respect Crane. They get along day to day, but it's clearly not a healthy relationship. But it's really the only relationship that Crane has in his life. He has no one else. His parents think he's dead. He has two friends, and like who have a daughter. They were like old high school friends of his that he does keep in touch with, but he's not supposed to. And it's a big secret, and it's a big no-no. But really, he only has Levi and Tammy and the worms. And when he finds out he is pregnant, he is devastated, and his world kind of comes crashing down in a predictable way. He's realizing that this cult is a cult, and it's not as good as it seemed when he joined, when he was about to kill himself, and there was literally no better options for him. He's realizing that these worms don't really understand him because they make him keep the baby, and they force Levi to watch over him and make sure that he doesn't harm the baby. And he tries to get help with his two friends who are outside of the cult who want to take him to get an abortion, but it's post Roe v. Wade. He's farther along than he thought he was. He's not even able to do that. It's rough. And that sounds rough, but the writing of this really amps it up. This book goes hard on the body horror. And, like, you feel this man's pain in the most visceral, unsettling ways. This is the worst thing that could have possibly happened to him. He hates it. It conflicts so much with what he wants out of life, what he wants out of his body, and there's so many things that conflict with, like, his autism. He has autism, and he's nonverbal, so he can't communicate with any of these people, really. It's just unbearable for him. To the point where a significant plot of this book is him trying to find a way to kill himself, because the worm, hive mind, puts him on suicide watch, and everyone has to watch him, and he's not allowed to leave his house, and they took all his scissors and knives and guns and bleach and anything he could use to hurt himself or the baby out of the house. And there's a good part of this book where I'm like, I really hope this guy's able to kill himself before he has to give birth to that baby, which is awful. What an awful solution that really at times feels like the only way out of this. And I'm not someone who encourages that. I don't encourage it at all, ever. Ever. Don't do that. Get help. You can call someone. You are not in a cult, and if you are, you can leave. But there are people you can talk to. Do not do that. But in this fictional world, everything was so bad for this man that I was like, damn, I hope he can do that. But I'm not even one of those people who's like, if there's an apocalypse, I'm just gonna kill myself. I don't want to deal with that. I want to deal with it. I'm gonna fight. I would never sign a DNR. I would never do that. I want to live forever. I'm a fighter. And so to be rooting for a character to kill themselves, as someone like me, that's how bad this is. And this author is so good at describing that. And the prose of this is just fucking visceral. This is a horror novel, baby. And it's hard to look away from. Like, it's really well written, but it's just awful. It's awful complimentary, because that's what it's supposed to be. So I think it's a really well executed book. I don't think it's perfect. I had a couple of things that I found lacking or like wanted to complain about. Really two things. They're kind of spoilers. One's not really a spoiler, and then one's a bigger spoiler. But the first one is that when they go through the house and take away all the knives and everything, they don't take his testosterone. And he is not sure how the testosterone will affect the baby, if Levi and all the other cult members know if the testosterone will affect the baby. He didn't even know if he could get pregnant on testosterone. You can. He doesn't know if them overlooking the testosterone is just an oversight or if they don't care. And so in a panic, he hides his testosterone, and he also hides the needle he uses to inject the testosterone. And so technically he has a weapon, and that never gets used again. That never gets brought up again. And also the testosterone thing never gets brought up again, because he only has a limited supply left, and he's not sure if they're going to try to take that away from him, or if they're not going to allow him to refill his testosterone. That never comes up. It's presented in the moment, especially when he's hiding it, as like this big thing, and he's got this smoking gun set aside. You know, like this maybe last resort thing, or like his one little semblance of hope for himself in his life, where he's got his testosterone, which he loves and values, and he can squeeze it out, make the most of it. But in his depressive state, he just stops taking it altogether anyway, and so it's not even a problem. And then he doesn't even use the needle for anything. So like that just felt like a loose thread. Like, you know, a smoking gun, if you see a gun, you expect the gun to come back later. There's lots of guns in this, but the needle doesn't come back later, which was maybe not what I expected. Like, sort of felt like a loose thread, or a waste of potential, or like a waste of page time if you're gonna set that up and then it doesn't do anything, you know? But really a minor critique overall. This is a 5-star book, but that was just like one thing I noticed that stuck out. Another thing, this is kind of spoilers. I guess this is a spoiler section, I guess. We don't really know why the worm cult wants this baby. That's never stated. And at first you think that maybe this is a worm baby and it's not a human baby growing in him. It's like an alien worm mass, because there's some inklings that Levi has been infected with worms and there's like literally worms inside of him. And so you think, oh, this is a worm baby. But it's not a worm baby, it's a human baby, which I did kind of like, because it's more horrific that this is just a normal human baby, and that this awful, terrible horror experience of having to birth just this normal baby and carry this normal baby is so horrific. I feel like it would maybe lessen the message if it was a worm baby, you know, that's the horror. Oh, it's not that the pregnancy is terrible, it's that it's this evil worm inside of him that's terrible. No, this is just a normal pregnancy, and it's fucking awful. Because pregnancy really is body horror if you think about it, man. Fuck that. Also, spoiler alert, he does have the baby. He has to have the baby. I did like that the baby dies. The baby dies in a very gruesome way, I was cool with that. I mean, obviously horrific, but this baby is born into a worm cult with parents who do not have any capacity to take care of it. Crane is not planning to take care of this child. He's planning to kill himself, and also has plans to kill Levi. And so the whole time, like, Levi's setting up cribs and, like, buying baby stuff, he's like, that's your fucking problem, man. I'm not doing jack shit for this baby. I'm not around. I am not a father. Fuck this kid. But then when the baby's born, there is a moment where it sort of feels like he loves the baby, which I didn't like. I didn't really like that. It sounds mean. But, I mean, the baby dies, and he kills the baby. And he kills it to spare it from this terrible life it's going to leave, that it never should have had in the first place. But there is a moment when it's born, and even after it dies, where he cares about it. And I kind of didn't like just, I don't know, go all out fucked up and just have him say, like, fuck this kid. This kid put me through so much bullshit. And to have him show the baby to the worms and be like, oh, this is what you want? This is what you want? Fuck this baby. And then kills the baby as, like, a power play. And not as a sympathy play. Although, I mean, this is probably more thematic to go for that sympathy play because no one was there to help him get out of a cult except his friends, but those, whatever. But when he was on the precipice of joining a cult, he didn't have anyone to save him, but he was able to be the person he never had and save this baby from growing up in this murder alien worm cult. So maybe that's thematically more impactful than him being like, I'm gonna kill this fucking baby. But he does kill the fucking baby, which I liked, and he does it in this very gruesome way, which was interesting and not what I expected, and probably not the most efficient way to kill a baby. I mean, those things are fragile. You could just drop it. I don't know, just like hit it on the head or something. That sounds terrible. I don't like talking about this, but... And I know there's also the thing of, like, hormone, like, if you give birth, like, you were going to have a chemical reaction to taking care of the baby or feeling something. Like, there's clearly a giant rush of hormones here that aid into that feeling. But I like that he wasn't overly sentimental about the baby. This is not a story where he births the baby and is like, oh my god, I have a daughter and I love her now and I am going to be a father and we are going to run away and escape and live happily ever after together as a family. At no point do you think that is going to happen, and that does not happen. Although this book did have a happier ending than I expected. He's able to murder everyone in the cult and then find his parents again. So you get the sense that he will get out of this cult and sort of be able to start over, but, like, he's lived through some fucking awful shit. I don't recommend knowing spoilers going into this, even though it's too late for you if you watched this whole video, I guess. But even knowing spoilers, I think it's still a good book to read, because you just have to read it to understand how visceral these emotions are and the reactions they elicit in you, and, like, how just, like, awful and disgusting and horrendous this book is, and, like, how it makes you feel. It's fucking heavy. It goes hard, man. It's a fucking swing. So it's worth it for the experience and not just the story. The story is interesting, but it's really the writing style and the emotiveness of this that is able to carry it and make it so compelling and, like, hard to look away from. It's like a car crash. You can't look away from, even though I don't really stare at car crashes. I don't know why we say that. I don't think I'm a person who would see a car crash and really stare at it prolongedly. But I did want to read this awful story about this man in this awful situation, even though I knew it wasn't going to have a happier ending. It had a happier ending than I thought. But I did want to know what the worms were up to. I did find it lacking that we didn't really get a sense of purpose. Like, what was this all for? What were they gonna do with that baby? I don't know what they were gonna do with that baby. I guess they were gonna put worms in it and make it, like, a worm person, because there's a thing where they've been putting worms in people and experimenting. I guess it kind of tells you that that's what they wanted to do in hindsight. But it doesn't feel like that impactful. It's not like a big moment where you're like, oh, that's what they want it for. It's just like, oh, I guess they're gonna do another human experiment on this baby and, like, have it grow up as a worm, part human creature thing, above. I don't know. But it's not that satisfying. And then also, I mean, there's other parts of worms. Crane kills all the worms. Spoiler alert. But again, that's only part of the hive mind. There's other sects of this cult and other piles of worm. And so, I don't know if he's gonna kill all of those. I don't feel like he is. It's not like a ending where this character has a sense of justice where he's like, I'm gonna free everyone. It's more like, I can't fucking believe I survived that. I don't really want this man to have to risk more of his life to go save other people. I want him to have a bath and, like, just chill out for a minute, you know? That'd be nice for him. I want this man to get away from this cult, not have to go save everyone else in the cult. And so, I don't know what the worms are gonna do elsewhere, you know? Clearly they'd still have schemes, they would still be taking people. I don't know. There's more worm lore that doesn't get explored here, but maybe that's also says something about cults. You know, what really is the end game of a cult? How do you know what they're going to do? How do you predict what a cult leader's thinking, or like rationalize that? Is some of it's just unknowable, or like a power trip, or like you'll never really understand the mind of a cult leader, or something like that? I don't know. That feels a little different when it's alien worms, and we also don't exactly know how the alien worms got here, or like how expansive they are. Are they only in like this region of the US, or are they everywhere? I don't know. There's a lot of worm lore that doesn't get explored that could get explored. So I could see someone criticizing that. I'm kind of criticizing it for that, I think. I think we could have had better worm motives, perhaps. That's something I was expecting that we didn't get. But again, a great book. And I highly recommend the audiobook for this. I listened to this on audiobook, and again, that absolutely aids to this experience. I think the text would still be good because Andrew Joseph White is clearly a very talented author. But I think his audiobooks, his publishers, whoever does his audiobooks, they go for it. Like, they really make these productions all out. All of his audiobooks have been like this. Especially The Spirit Bears Its Teeth. There's like performance. They hire the perfect voice actors for these books. And whoever voice acted this gives a fucking performance. And you can feel it. He's not just reading the words on the page. He is embodying these characters. It is fucked up. And he brings a lot of emotion to it. That is clearly on the page that the author brought to it, but he brings it to life, man. And that makes it even heavier to listen to, and like even harder to get through, harder to read, and it's fucking great. Also, this audiobook does something I don't think I've ever seen before, where they give the monster a monster voice. The worm cult, it's multiple creepy voices, like layered over top of each other, all saying the same thing. Like a hive mind of like fucking creepy zombie worms, and they're fucking screaming at you. And it is jarring every single time. It's like actually scary, especially the first time, because you are not expecting that. You're just expecting the audiobook narrator to be reading these lines in like maybe a creepy voice, but you are not expecting like the production of layered vocals like that. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to understand. I could definitely see someone criticizing that. There were a couple points where I had to like go back and listen again. It helps to like pick out one voice out of the hive and like follow that trail, but I think the overall effect of it is really good, and I think that makes up for those moments where it's a little hard to understand. And usually the worms don't have that much dialogue, or like not all at once. They like to say shorter phrases, and so it's not as hard to understand. But if they do have like a big block of dialogue, that's when it gets harder to understand. But like, worth the experience. Really cool production choice. They had a budget. And they did it. They did right by this book, and I really enjoyed that. So I highly recommend the audiobook to all of Andrew Joseph White's books. I don't know who does his publishing, audiobook rights, whatever. I don't know how that gets decided. Because I think his YA books have a different publisher than this adult book. Although maybe not. Maybe it's like two different imprints of the same parent corporation. I don't really know how publishers work, to be honest with you. But whoever's in charge of that did a bang up job. Hell yeah. Good shit. And the narrator, whose name I don't know, but I'll put it somewhere on the screen. That guy did a fucking good job. Great fucking job, dude. And great job to Andrew Joseph White for writing this banger of a book, even though it's fucking hard to get through. But in a good way. I mean that in the best way possible. And I highly recommend it if you're into like fucked up body horror and messy trans rage and trans autistic characters. A lot of good shit going on here. Not for everyone though. Don't force yourself to read this if it's not your thing, because you won't have a good time. But if you are into this, you'll have a great fucking time.